Steph Haggard is full of life. He's got a kind of humanistic love of people that I think really informs his work and makes it vivid and more significant.
He is just a phenomenal scholar who's worked on a wide-ranging set of really important issues, but he's also someone with a tremendous amount of integrity, who cares about his students, who cares about UC San Diego, and has helped build the School of Global Policy and Strategy, where he's been a professor for more than 30 years before he retired.
I'm Steph Haggard. I teach at the School of Global Policy and Strategy at UCSD, and I directed the Korea Pacific program for many years before I stepped down. I actually got drawn to political science in part because of political economy questions. I was in the military in Korea for a year, and I saw the beginnings of what was this dramatic growth transition in that country. And that sort of attracted me to the question of why the rest of the region had also grown so rapidly. And I wrote a book that compared East Asia and Latin America in this regard and tried to get at some of the distinctive factors. And at that point, one of the things I was interested in was the role that state institutions played. Most analysts at that time saw these as market-oriented miracles, but I just didn't see that as being the case.
Steph Haggard was recruited by GPS in the early 1990s. He was attractive to us here in our school because at that time he was a pioneer working on the Asia-Pacific region, and not very many people were doing that.
UCSD was the most attractive to me, precisely because it was working at this intersection of regional studies and social science. The institution was relatively new when I joined. It was maybe 5 or 6 years old, but they had hired extraordinarily well at the founding, and that provided a base. And I think one of the things I'm proudest of is contributing to the growth of GPS as a center of excellence at UCSD on Asia and the Americas.
One of our core principles is academic excellence. Steph Haggard shows that across the board in his research. It's also about collaboration. He is a faculty member who puts as much effort into his teaching and his service as he puts into his research. He's held probably every important position at GPS over the years. He's been the interim dean and associate dean. He helped build our executive master's program. He was on the advisory board for the new undergraduate program, international studies program. He developed the Korea Pacific program and led it. And even listing all these, I've probably forgotten something.
One of the things I'm proudest of my time at GPS was mentoring a whole generation of students on the intricacies of the diplomacy, economics, and politics of the Korean Peninsula.
Well, I think what's really interesting about Steph's work is especially his work on North Korea and his interest in authoritarian regimes. Comparative politics scholars have mostly studied democratic countries because we have elections, we have election data. So it's much easier to study democratic countries than authoritarian countries. Also, authoritarian countries are very secretive. But what Steph has done uniquely important work on North Korea. He's done that by looking at the trade between North Korea and China and other countries, and he's done it by interviewing refugees.
All throughout my career, I've had an interest in regime type, basically the question of whether governments are authoritarian or democratic in underlying form, and what the consequences of that are for public policy. Since going emeritus, I've taken a position as research director at the Institute on Global Conflict and Cooperation. I've been leading a research project there on changing global governance and how it's influenced by illiberal regimes. And by this, I mean the way that Russia, China, a coalition of authoritarian states are influencing the multilateral institutions like the UN, and also the way that backsliding states are influencing democratic regional organizations as they are in Europe.
When you take a look at Steph's career, you'll see that he has had a remarkable imprint on both the scholarship and the policy discussions. For example, he's been central to the Institute on Global Conflict and Cooperation's efforts, a discussion of security on the Korean Peninsula. He has been the founding editor for 22 years of the Journal of East Asian Studies, which really transformed the publications on the study of the politics and economics of East Asia. He was on the board of advisors of the Korean Economic Institute, which is kind of the who's who of leadership in Korea. By those and so many other ways, Steph has both had a personal imprint on policy and has shaped the intellectual scholarly dialogue.
He also was somebody who was very good at building linkages with people in other departments. He worked with people in the political science department and people in economics, as well as the people in the area studies. At the same time, GPS became the home of the international studies programs, and there were lots of courses to teach and lots of relationships to work out, and he became a real leader in doing that.
When I look over the full span of Steph Haggard's career, it's really extraordinary to see the many areas where he's had impact on campus, out in his discipline and his professional societies, and then out in the real world, and then making that all available to our students so they could learn from him and have him as a mentor, a teacher, a role model. Just that breadth, that really exemplifies the best tradition of the Revelle Medal.
I was recently elected to the American Academy of Arts and Science, and again, it came as a sort of surprise, just like the Revelle Medal. But I can only say that the timing was really nice because I'm moving to emeritus status and continuing to teach, but it kind of capped a career, so I was quite pleased.